Thank you very much for giving me this very auspicious occasion to address you all. I also thank you, Mr. Prashant Shukla, who made a short introduction, and Mr. John Chandy for initiating me into this matter, particularly on an important day in annals of Indian history. Today is, as pointed out by Mr. Shukla, this is the 72nd anniversary of the Republic of India. Republic means the day when the entire Indian continent had been brought under one law called the Constitution of India. According to some pundits, Indian Constitution is the most important event in the history of the world. Many constitutional experts expressed that it is a wonder. When India attained independence in 1947, one-third of the Indian geographical territory, which was under the British government's suzerainty alone, became independent. The remaining two-thirds was under the suzerainty of 565 sovereign monarchs. British Parliament permitted the monarchs to have the option either to remain without joining in the Indian Union or with Pakistan, or to join with either of them. Some of the sovereign states declared as independent nations. For example, the state of Travancore, where I live, declared as an independent nation under the Maharaja of Travancore. Even that nation at that time appointed ambassadors in foreign countries. Some of the states, larger than many European countries, with a powerful army, can be cited as an example of the vast potentiality under which all these independent sovereign states had been integrated into one union called the Republic of India. All the 565 independent states, when they were integrated, this is under the work of the Constituent Assembly, which is consisted of representations from all these states. They deliberated on each of the articles for the Constitution, which probably became the largest among all the constitutions in the democratic world. There are 395 articles arranged in 22 parts with 8 schedules. The Constituent Assembly members took a very long period of 3 years, only 13 days short of completing 3 years, for completing the deliberations and to make the final draft of the Constitution. That is why this is considered to be the largest among the constitutions in the world. The Constituent Assembly was inspired or took models from other constitutions such as United States of America, Japan, and Ireland. I am very happy to mention that Irish constitution became an inspiration for many of the articles. After the constitution was completed, some of the legal experts expressed their views. Sir Ivor Jennings was considered to be a constitutional expert of a very high ranking. He said the Indian constitution is too prolix and too lengthy. But he predicted that within 6 to 7 years, it would collapse. So when Sir Winston Churchill, who was the Prime Minister of Britain, predicted that through balkanization, this republic is likely to disintegrate into several nations within a decade. But all those predictions became untrue as the republic became very strong, even after the 71 years. Not only there were no balkanization and no collapse, but the republic became stronger and in some respect became larger with additions of geographical territories. During the last 71 years, the constitution has faced many challenges for its survival. The most difficult was on account of the power of Parliament to amend the Constitution of India. Article 368 of the Constitution allowed the Parliament to amend the Constitution with the two-third majority. And using the two-third majority, the Constitution has been thus far amended 104 times. This number is much larger than even older Constitution. It is a welcome thing that the Constitution could be updated, amended for meeting the situations which may arise, which could be unforeseen at the time when it was made. But that is in a way a plus side of it, but the flip side of it is there was with a two-third majority. One day the Parliament amended even the very amending article, Article 368 itself, enabling the Parliament to amend the Constitution without any limitation. This is really the first challenge which the Constitution had to face. Fortunately, that amendment was thwarted by the Supreme Court of India when the largest number of judges in a bench, 13 judges, pronounced a judgment in what is known as the Keshavananda Bharati case. Though the majority is a very narrow one, just one, a thin majority, it held that the amending power has inherent limitations, that the basic features of the Constitution must be kept intact. The basic features are to be decided as and when the situation arises. The basic features have not been defined. That is why it is left to the situation in future. Now, the more than 1.5 lakh citizens were detained under a draconian law which enabled the Constitution, which enabled the government to detain them without trial. This is because there was a very narrow interpretation given to one of the pivotal articles in the Indian Constitution, this Article 21. That article, though very short article, it says that no person shall be deprived of his liberty or life except in accordance with the procedure established by law. The initial interpretation given by the Constitution bench of the Supreme Court on this article is the law indicated in that article, if it is after complying with the rules of practice prescribed, then that is enough to become a law by which the life and liberty of citizens can be taken away. This interpretation helped a government at that time to pass the draconian law with a 2/3 majority and then detain people. That period is known as the emergency period of the internal emergency of the Indian Constitution of the Republic of India. But fortunately, subsequently, that interpretation has been overruled by the Supreme Court, a larger bench, and said the law indicated in Article 21 should not be confined to a law passed by the legislature, but it must pass the test of just, fair, and reasonable also. If a law is not just, if it is not reasonable, if it is arbitrary, then Article 21 is hit by that. Because of the larger interpretation later came, the rights of the citizens embodied in the Constitution could be protected thereafter. Now, we will consider what are the human rights mentioned in the Constitution. I'll particularly restrict to the natural human rights indicated in Article 19 of the Constitution. They are freedom of expression and speech, the right to assemble peaceably, and the right to move freely, and the right to carry on any occupation for eking out a living. The Constitution said such human rights can be controlled or curtailed only for the limited object of imposing reasonable restrictions for safeguarding public or national interest. What are such interests are also indicated in Article 19 in subclause 2. Now a word about, is there anything, any disturbance? Is there any disturbance? Or can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Then now a word about the directive principles of state policy. This is incorporated in a separate part of the Constitution. That part is numbered as Part 4. Directive principles of state policy are included for the purpose of keeping the government informed as a guidance for governance of the country. It is the duty of the lawmaking bodies to apply those principles in making laws. Many guidelines have been shown in that part. One of them became a very controversial later on. That is called the state shall endeavor to secure a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India. Though most of the law are uniform in India, only the personal law based on religious laws are different, remaining different. That is, personal law means the right of inheritance, the marriage, succession, etc. But the live wire of the Constitution is created through Article 32 and Article 226. In a federal setup of the Indian Constitution, the high courts of the state are considered to be the highest court of that state, and Supreme Court is made as an apex court. And Article 32 will apply to the apex court. Article 32 itself is a fundamental right that any citizen can move the Supreme Court for protection of his fundamental right if there is any variation in that. By and large, I would say that the Supreme Court of India and the High Court for each state have succeeded in discharging their duties. That may be the crucial reason why Indian Constitution continues even on this 72nd day without any glitch. A prediction was made, as I pointed out by Sir Ivor Jennings, that it may not last beyond 7 years. Sir Ivor Jennings was appointed by the then Ceylon government to to draft a constitution for that country. He made it. That is, after making the earlier prediction, he made a constitution for Ceylon. You look at the irony that when he predicted the Indian constitution will collapse within 7 years, but the constitution of Ceylon, which he drafted and created, collapsed after 7 years. Whereas Indian constitution is now thriving and throbbing even after the 7 decades. That is a matter on which I am very happy to live through the entire period. When the India became a republic, I was just 10 years old, or 10. No, I'm sorry. I would have been 13 years, and I have seen how the republic had been declared. Now I continue during all this period when the constitution has faced challenges and outlived them, and the constitution remains intact even today as a protection umbrella for the people of India. May I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity and to address you on this important subject on this important day. Thank you very much.